Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Saturday, February 28th. Hope you are doing well. Today, we're going to get into it with the Game of Thrones cards. So, disclaimer for those that don't know, give me grace because I can get pretty captivated in not just the meaning of the cards, but also the story and the characters depicted on the cards. I'm going to try not to do so much of that today, not making any promises, because I do believe that is part of the novelty of using these cards. But for warning purposes, I thought I'd just put that out there in case anybody's here that's never experienced the Game of Thrones cards reading. All right. Yeah, so I was inspired to use these cards because I don't know if it's but I do see a correlation between these two things. I was guided ever so randomly this week to rewatch the entire Hunger Games series. Love it, absolutely love it, but I have never, since I've seen them all, originally been guided to watch all of them. And it went from like one to, it was just weird. I can't even convey to you how random it was, but clearly not so much. Because when I clicked on it, I think it's on Prime. It's streaming on Prime. When I clicked on Prime, it's not like I haven't seen it, before, but for some reason, I don't know, it just felt like I was literally like on autopilot when I pushed watch. It was weird. And then by the time I did that, I was locked in a whole binge session pretty much. But anyway, these cards and the series on HBO have a similar feel. Not quite, of course, because Game of Thrones is more like medieval, it's like a much, much older time, where actually I believe the Hunger Games is really supposed to kind of be like post-apocalyptic, like futuristic in a sense, actually. So it is kind of like two opposite ends of the spectrum, but the energy of the storyline to me is quite similar, and the whole have and have nots struggle, throughout the entire thing, and the triumph of more or less justice overall, at the end. Well, kind of, sort of, in Game of Thrones, not so much kind of, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. Definitely in the Hunger Games, for sure, there is a triumphant ending that kind of like levels the scales and the playing field to some degree, where you find some resolve, but you don't really get to go too far past that in Game of Thrones. But there is a resolution that is satisfying enough, for what it's worth. So anyway, I will shut up now and let's get into what we got today with these cards. All right, Knight of Cups. Some type of offer or proposition coming through. Something of emotional essence, maybe an apology or flattery, maybe something seductive or alluring. Someone seductive or alluring could be the Knight of Cups. Let's see what else we got. Six of Swords. It's an offer to escape. Okay, to get away, maybe. All right. It's an offer to get away. It's maybe a love offer, like, ooh, run away with me type of. That's romantic, kind of, depending on who's asking. Or go away with me. Maybe, um, you might get an offer or an invitation to take a trip, maybe a cruise or some type of vacation somewhere, where you have to cross a body of water, somewhere distant. Um, hmm. Now here is where the card comes, the depiction of the card, because this is when, the Six of Swords is actually when, Arya Stark was escaping King's Landing after she had just seen her father get executed. So she was actually escaping to what she thought was going to be calmer waters, because she was, really trying to evade persecution, because she knew once her father was out of there, she was pretty much, you know, up, prey for the wolves for the most part, i.e. the Lannisters, not literally the wolves, because their family represents the wolves, but yeah, it's like pray for the Lannisters, who were overtaking power for the most part at that time. Um, yeah, so she thought she was escaping, and it was escaping trouble at that moment, or conflict at that in that moment, but she actually, I mean, it can be argued that she was on her way to her destiny, which was to become one of the faceless men, which was an assassin. But the journey that she had to get there was actually, quite a challenging one, before she emerged from, as her evolved self on the other side of that. But this is the transition, from, like I said, like an escape, escaping what could be something, that what could be a detrimental situation or even a dangerous situation. And that she was being escorted. It was like almost like a secret escape. So that's why I'm definitely feeling something on the practical end about some type of secret getaway, or it could be a surprise, of someone inviting you somewhere. But that's why I'm thoughtful about the true nature of the card, because like I said, what she thought she was escaping to actually ended up being quite dangerous. If it was a part of her path, but it was quite dangerous. So there is the, um caution for discernment, because the Knight of Cups, typically for me, I'm always thoughtful and, kind of apprehensive about taking a knight's offer at face value, because there can sometimes be ulterior motives or something a bit unstable or unsettled about the offer. So you could get like, this is just an example, get an invitation for a little secret weekend rendezvous that seems like it could be harmless, or it would be sweet or romantic, and it could be Lord, it could be the first point on a tumultuous relationship path, where it was supposed to be sweet and innocent, and ultimately ends up being a lesson, but not always in the most pleasant ways that we like to learn our lessons, if you know what I mean. Like, it could end up being something kind of karmic, hopefully not, but that's what I'm seeing here based on the nature of these cards. The fact that it's a knight, and the fact that the Six of Swords in this depiction is an escape from one danger into, in some ways, another. So don't get handled is what I'm seeing. Like, it could even feel like a romantic whirlwind of an expression, or a proposition or proposal. Almost feeling like a blissful whisk away, or a chance of a lifetime at something, like a whirlwind romance that you wouldn't want to miss out on. However, those whirlwinds could have long-term implications if you're not careful, and if it's not the right frequency of whirlwind. We don't want a twister or a hurricane. Like, let it truly be a transition to peaceful and calmer waters relationally, if that's what we're talking about. Or opportunistically, whatever it is. Let's see what else we got. Let's see what's next, because maybe it's not so much of a caution. Let's see what we got. All right. The Emperor. Okay, well, that's interesting. We love Jon Snow. We love to see Jon Snow, especially in the upright. And this is Jon Snow in his fullest power, his full potential of power as the Emperor here, which he never actually got to step into. Pardon me. Like, he was all. Funny thing is, he was always, for all the people that were fighting over the Iron Throne, he was always the heir to the Iron Throne, unbeknownst to him and to a lot of people, as a matter of fact. And the one person that did know died with that secret, which was Ned Stark, who was executed right before Arya. It was his father, but he grew. Oh, no. I'm sorry. He grew up thinking that it was his father, but it was really his uncle, who was kind of hiding his identity as as his bastard child, so that he wouldn't become a target, because if you know that the Iron Throne was the most coveted seat of authority and leadership in the Seven Kingdoms, and everybody wanted it. He was the one person that was assigned to it rightfully and didn't want anything to do, never wanted really any of the power or the positions of leadership that he was adorned with, even when it was just, justifiably due. He just never wanted that leadership. So I don't know. The Emperor here, I feel like, given, like I said, the energy here is positive, that it could be something promising, or something that may even seem like a casual offer or some casual expression, perhaps a proposition, proposal, of feelings or love or admiration, interest, that has the potential to grow, maybe perhaps with its transition into some other place and time. So maybe for some, a relationship has a designated location to blossom, or, like there's some coordinates that a partnership or a union or an opportunity, or maybe even where you may need to be transported to physically, back to the Six of Swords, of her being on the path of her destiny to finally realize your full potential, or to align with some type of partnership, align in some type of partnership that can reach its full potential. Perhaps, there's a call to actually physically move. Maybe a job, maybe a home, maybe a city, a town, a state, hell, maybe a country, as I'm saying. So I'm looking at it, maybe perhaps I'm seeing it as some type of getaway, maybe a vacation, or like a casual visit, or travel experience could turn out to be something that, kind of proves more than that, like maybe a possible relocation. You just going to visit so-and-so with no real, intentions to necessarily move, particularly not to somewhere foreign, and then you get there and it feels like home, like a strange land feels like home. So maybe there could be an offer for something like that. And perhaps if you don't, as it is with Arya, who didn't know what she was about to step into on the other side of that water, maybe you can't really reach your full potential until or unless you say yes to whatever this offer is, you know. And in some ways, put like, you know, there's something, you know, there's always a bright side if you're looking to have it turn out, you know, if you're trusting that the universe is working in your favor. So even if, you know, you are invited or inspired to move for one purpose, maybe because of a casual invitation or an intimate one or a little vacay or whatever the case may be, that may or may not prove its worth in the long run, or have the longevity that, you know, there could be a hope for on the forefront. Perhaps some things or people and places are just being used as a vehicle of transportation to get you to a particular place of destiny, or a rendezvous point, so to speak, that is just for you, particularly that you maybe wouldn't have transitioned your way to, or literally transported yourself to, on your own terms or by your own with your own will and intentions, you know. Like imagine getting an invitation to go on like a little weekend getaway, and the weekend sucks, like you have a horrible time. Worst case scenario, of course, because obviously we want good experiences, but worst case scenario, you realize that this ain't it in terms of who and, you know, the experience you were invited to have. However, you experience this place that maybe you never had before, or at a different time in your life than you've had before, and realize something far more significant, like maybe this is where you need to be, you know, or you meet someone in that place that you wouldn't have if it wasn't for this invitation turns sour. Now, again, that's worst case scenario. So if it's best case scenario and everything is great, everything is wonderful, then it's a win-win all around. So I just said that just to exemplify how even, you know, something that doesn't turn out the way you intended it to or may have hoped for can still be valuable, you know. All right, so let's see what else is after the Emperor. Yeah, literally for some, you could go somewhere randomly and meet the man of your dreams, i.e. your Jon Snow, your knight in shining off armor for real. Somebody that's highly powerful, responsible. Oops, snap. Hold on. Ooh, with the 10 of Cups. Oh my goodness. Which is interesting. It's the 10 of Cups, but it's all candles. I just noticed that. Or maybe I've never seen this card before. That's so weird. It's all candles in vessels, like in, you know, but what I would consider candle holders, but I guess they're cups, whatever. But interesting though, when you get into that, right? Because whatever the vessel is labeled as cups here, and then you got flames within those cups, you know, like it could be a fiery romance or a passionate encounter underway here, some type of passionate payout, let's say, because we ain't just dealing with water, we dealing with flames. Interesting. The song could be. I mean, I started this talking about a lover's getaway, so I don't know. Maybe that's where we at with it. But I'm you know, I ain't trying to force that. It just feels right. It's rolling off the tongue right now. Speaking of, well, I didn't say this. How you say speaking of and you ain't even said it. But there's a planetary in my head I was thinking of, things being in alignment for this energy, but I didn't actually say it. But there is a rare planetary alignment happening today where 6 of the planets are going to be visible to the naked eye. Well, not all 6, because I think 2 of them, Neptune and Uranus, you'll have to use a telescope to see. But the other 4 or so, you'll be able to, it's not a complete line, but they're aligned in like kind of like a loose arc. So it's described where it looks like a pretty cool alignment that you usually, this, it's a rare time, like you won't be able to see something similar to this again for another like 2.5 years. So there could be some significance there, that there's some fates aligning in a way, that only the divine can do, that are ultimately a setup for some expansive or extensive cycle moving into the future. Like, let's say 2-3 years, or maybe 2-3 decades, whatever it pans out to be. But there's a setup here, a divine setup of alignment, and we're seeing it as above and as below, for sure. And I would encourage, like, to almost be looking for that type of, for that energy that's being conducted in the sky, in the cosmos, to be expressed through your waking life. Like, look for your own alignment, your divine alignment, and be open. And perhaps this is a correction for me of not being so, cautious and defensive, even, that you need to keep your heart and mind open for alignments that may not make a lot of sense, or that may just come at such a time or in such a magnitude that it is surprising, it's kind of astounding. So it would bring like a bit of a cause for pause, like, hold up, what's in that cup? What you offering? And I ain't saying you shouldn't ask, and I ain't saying that you shouldn't feel, sure about it and feel good about it. But it is the season for, miraculous alignments. So why wouldn't that be something that would occur for you or through you, Shoot. If anything, it should be lighter on the skepticism, like, what you doing here, or why now, or why me, or what for, and heavier actually on the calling in, the anticipation, the expectation, like, yes, this is the time for such, this now is, what is the saying? For such a time as this, like, this is the moment. Why not now? Why not me? Why not here? Why not you? Why not us? Whatever it is. How much longer do you want to wait? Right? I think for many of us, we've gotten used to the waiting game, that it almost feels, safe there, especially when it comes to matters of love, because there is safety in the abstinence of intimacy with outside of yourself, of course, where it's like you've been conditioned and groomed by your own might and will to wait for the most ideal circumstances, that you're damn sure not jumping at anything, that's just subpar or half-assed or barely enough. So you wouldn't be putting yourself out, you wouldn't be jumping at opportunities that aren't holistically fulfilling, such as the 10 of Cups. But on sight, perhaps at the first proposal or extension of an invitation, it may not, look at the difference here, the disparity, it may not present itself as an emperor. Someone may not present themselves to be as powerful and influential as they are once you get to know them, or as full of the as complete of a package as you desire to encounter until you actually allow that, what do you call it, like that, uh allow that acquaintance to blossom in some way. Hmm. I keep hearing the love boat with the Six of Swords, and it don't look like no love boat. You know, I said something about a cruise, didn't I? So it's like, that ain't no cruise. That ain't even no, it ain't even a speedboat or a yacht. Not even the smallest of yachts. Is barely a canoe from on site. You know what I mean? But maybe perhaps looks can be deceiving for what you're about to encounter. Like the thing that you expect to come with all, the shining armor, the bells and whistles, all saying all the right things, making all the right moves. Perhaps it may be packaged differently. Perhaps, perhaps. And sometimes the thing that is, or person that is saying all the right things and making all the right moves and gestures, has ulterior motives. So that's why the discernment is really key, and being in tune with what is bringing you like a wholeness, a total fulfillment with the 10 of cups, not just half of that, not just three of the cups, you know what I mean? Like it's a good time, but not for a long time, and it needs to render itself holistically valuable and sincere. There's something about sincerity here as well with the Knight of Cups and the 10. Like how sincere is the offer? And it could be also the return of an offer, or a return of someone that went away. Like say it's an old, I'm not too heavy on this because it's Mercury retrograde officially, so you got to be careful what you entertain, especially from the past. But it could be someone that has come back, evolved, and matured a great deal to now be the emperor. Maybe there was a breakup when they were just a knight, or they went away, or you went your separate ways, or maybe you were a knight, you know what I mean, and you went your separate ways, had some experiences in the Six of Swords, good, bad, or indifferent, but whatever it was maturing. And it's put someone in a position to now really be master of their destiny and of their creative force. Like they have much more control, self-control over the energies that they put out, and also over the energies that they align themselves with or let in. Maybe having conserved a great deal of their passion, or abstained. I did use that word, I think, today, or was it the other day? Abstained a great deal, maybe even could have been intimately, where someone has just been focused on really cultivating the best of their own energy, and that's why they may have so much love to give, or so much passion stored up, because they've been much more reserved and conservative about how they give it out, or what they expended on, or who they expended on. Yeah. And then we got the Six of Cups here, which is then, here it is, the sharing, caring portion of this message. But it also does give some inflection of the, yes, this is that right here with the Six of Cups. This is Jon Snow and what's her name? not Sonya. What's her name? I'm so sorry, girl. I like you too. Arya and it's an S. Sansa. I think that's her name, Sansa. When they returned finally after their long journey on their own paths, you know, talk about dark nights of the soul, same as where Arya was on her way to. These each had their own path of evolution, of becoming to embark upon. It's that really started, you know, once their father died. You know, once Ned Stark was executed, I guess I almost said assassinated, but you know, they had their own coming of age, rites of passage journeys to take. And this is when they had come back together after so many years. And before, when they parted ways as children or as young people, they really didn't get along, or at least Sansa hated Jon. She resented Jon because she really was kind of gleaning from her mother's resentment, because her mom kind of hated Jon, because till her dying day she also thought that was Ned's bastard kid. When what a noble thing for him to have taken on for his safety, because he hadn't stepped out on his wife, and that wasn't his son, that was his sister's son. But he kept that secret close to the chest because he promised his sister to protect him. And he knew, if anybody knew that he was actually a Targaryen by blood, that he would have a target on his back. He would have never made it to his destiny ultimately. But anyway, this again speaks to that growing and then coming back or becoming that I'm speaking of, where this could be, very well could be, the past under reconsideration, because it's been reconstructed in a way that is balanced, that not a lover coming back for one night delight, you know, or trying to, I don't know, you know, like with ulterior motives, and definitely not meaning well, just trying to see what's up for now type of thing. This is not that. That is not the ideal. The only plausible consideration for the past in the present is if something is of something or someone that has fully matured and evolved from what they were or what was before, you know. And even with that, like, you could never fully know until you've given it some time to really reveal itself, which is why to some degree there's still, I mean, it depends on how intuitive you are, honestly, but even with that you would want to be careful, because as I stated before, with Mercury retrograding in Pisces, there's a bit of a romanticism of the past that could be tricky. And it may not even be deception, or, you know, intentionally, but it's just the nostalgia of it all, you know, the what you know, the will they won't they of it all, you know, the happy ending, the ideal happy ending of it all, that could be, but it also could be, that could be true, but also could be a fantasy, you know. So that's why I'm like, we and then we got the Six of Coins here, which for me is definitely something more solid even than the Six of Cups. Like, it feels like something being solidified into matter that matters with the Six of Coins, something that is balanced, is reciprocal, is trustworthy even. So it's hard to say. Like, even I in this message I literally am having a hard time saying like yes, no, because it would be such a personal consideration, you know, like I said, of really honing in on what you're feeling, like what your senses are telling you, but also what makes sense logically to some degree as well. You know, but it looks positive. Like, I don't see any particular cause for alarm. And like I said, even the worst case scenario could be just a stepping stone or a segue to where you ultimately want to be, or where you want to be, or who you want to be with. So you got to go at your own, uh I would say at your own risk, but it's not that. It's like, go at your own discernment, you know. I'm gonna get one more after this king of not king of coins, but hey, I like that slip up. Six of coins. Um hmm. Because with the Six of Cups, how Sansa, like, that was such a sweet moment between the two of them where they were able to like give each other grace and forgiveness and understanding for the past, and so much had transgressed since then, you know, since they had last seen each other, that they had a much deeper appreciation for each other's point of view. And so the love between them was deeper, you know. It was like a true respect that they had gained for one another, and a comfort, you know, that was reestablished there as well with that Six of Cups. And then for it to turn over into the Six of Coins, it's definitely speaking to there being some type of mutual feeling, or uh, some type of requited emotional exchange here, you know, where it's quite, I mean, six after the six, and then we already had the 10. Like, there's a great deal of like, there's enough love to go around in some dynamic or in some partnership where each person can feel well taken care of, seen, heard, appreciated, respected, valued. Maybe it took a trip around the world, a trip, you know, a spin around the block, as they say, you know, a season, a lifetime, a lesson for someone to actually not only find a deeper understanding for themselves, but also have a greater capacity and a depth to hold that space for someone else. And it couldn't have, like, the Knight of Cups would be like the shallow end of that emotional availability, where the 10, the 6, you know, is something much more significant. So there's hope for something that could be regenerating from the past to have a very stable foundation, and perhaps even a bright future. For sure, there's something here that is absolutely, you know, probable, and possible at least, but perhaps probable, you know, at best. Like, something it may be so fated that you couldn't get around it. I did see the Wheel of Fortune a lot when I was pre-shuffling. It kept finding its way, either plopping out on the table or finding its way at the bottom. So, you know, it's something fateful here that I feel pretty good about. But let me get one more, and then I'm going to keep it short because it's already at 38. The two of it's too many, but let me just take a look. I'm gonna shuffle again, but let me just take a look. Yeah, here's a new, this is the end of struggle, a new Two of Coins. Something is being balanced out here, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe an approach, or what could that be with the Two of Coins? Timing. It could be timing that's being weighed, or not weighed, balanced, kind of balanced. It could be a matter of just like divine timing, or someone being thoughtful about the timing of their approach, or about the timing of an offer, or some invitation, or whatever. Maybe that was what was always actually, Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Maybe that's what was always impending, was the timing of it all and all of the obstacles that needed to more or less be overcome or eradicated in order for something to come together, the way that it's designed to do so. And for many, so much time, like I said before, could have passed where you kind of just like indifferent, like if it comes, it comes. If not, if so be it. Or when it comes, it comes. If not, you're almost like resolved to, like, almost in a surrender type of state, to some degree, because there's nothing else you can really do about it if you don't, if it's not you that's doing the propositioning or extending the invitation or proposal. In many ways, like, there's nothing that you can do but just wait, and stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know what I mean? Maybe keep a bag packed in case, or, always be prepared to throw some things in the bag if need be, if an opportunity presents itself, if you have that luxury. So, or in case, just staying ready for opportunity to present itself whenever it does. And that may not necessarily mean physically having a bag packed, but it could be the mentality of readiness, where you're not particularly um like, what's the right word, locked down or tied down or connected to any place. Like, if you got an opportunity today or tomorrow to move for something that you feel is a great opportunity, or a great experience, or has a lot of promise, you're not necessarily so attachments, that's what I was trying to get to. You're not so attached to where you are and what you're doing, that you wouldn't at least consider it. Like, you're not too attached to anything in particular at this time that you wouldn't be open to what could be a better opportunity. And I feel like that's a good place and space to be in. Again, if you feel you have the luxury to do so. But you always have the luxury to at least consider, I think. Some, it might even be it might even be like um a daunting, um what's the right word I'm looking for, uh proposition or such, because you are so secure or stable in a place where it's like, how could I even think of uprooting my life or changing jobs, locations, positions, or starting a new job, a new relationship, meeting new people, starting in a new field, or starting my own business. Like, it could be many different things that you're called into the deep to explore. um and the most challenging thing to do would be to say no when you feel so rooted already. Well, the most challenging thing to do would be to give a definite answer, especially when you feel rooted already. When you're in limbo and it's like, I ain't got nothing better going on, it's a lot easier to say, sure, why not? But as I said, it could even be as simple as you just being content, being in your own space by yourself, or being single, or dating casually and not doing anything too serious or giving any labels or meanings. That could be a thing too. Like, something that's started off casually is progressing into what seems or feels to be something much more serious, where there's devotion and dedication on the line or in consideration. And that could be, that could be a daunt to the senses in some way, shape, or form. I'm just here to say it's all understandable. However, from how I'm seeing the cards, something that is presenting itself in whatever timing that may be. But I will say this is prime season for it, given how things are aligning as above, so below. Something that's presenting itself is going to be to it has a high potential to yield very positive results. Now, what else may come along before that, after that, you know what I mean, in the midst of that, you know what I'm saying? You could be dating casually and one person presents themselves in one vein and the other, and you really literally have a choice to make, and that could be anxiety inducing as well. you know but something is positive here, and I guess it's nice to have at least one good choice on the board, even if you have to kind of sift through the best one, because some people don't have none at all. So let's see. I'm gonna do one more and close it out. 10 of coins. Wow. Wouldn't have wanted to miss that ending, would we? I mean, whatever it is, this is what I have to say, okay? I'm going to give you, myself, and anyone else much more credit than to project a spirit of confusion over you where there really is no cause for one. I'm just speaking of the transit, this Pisces energy. But I would also like to say that if you can relate to having gone on a journey to self, to becoming a more evolved expression of your authentic self, as I depicted in the beginning, and, having some experience under your belt, maybe even some challenges, maybe some triumphs, whatever the case may be, it's all contributed to this matured state of, even with the Six of Coins, that's Varus, who was a very wise character. He had his ways about him, but ultimately he was always looking at things from the bigger picture as he saw it, So if you relate to that energy, if not only are you mature, wise, evolved, and experienced enough to know a good thing when you see it or when it's presented itself to you, I also feel like the choice or the proposition, the offer, whatever it is that's in question or consideration, will be such a standout that it will be uh, it'll be obvious. You know what I mean? It'll be irrefutable. It'll be non-negotiable. There wouldn't be any confusion about it, even if it's a difference between the past and something present. You wouldn't, with the Emperor, you wouldn't be one that, again, is so caught up in the attachments, emotionally or otherwise, familiarly, carnally even, that you wouldn't be able to see the forest for the trees. So that's where I want to leave it, because I'm projecting all of this, like, be careful, like, could be this, but could be that, as the undercurrent. And it's true. It is true that those frequencies exist, and they may always, for as long as we know, in this breath of existence. But if your life experiences, particularly the trials and tribulations or trials and eras of it all, haven't groomed you to make strong, prosperous decisions for yourself at this point, then by God, what was it all for? And not to mention the magneticism of that frequency of wisdom should only be attractive, to those energetic matches that are in alignment with what you're emitting. So even if you have a couple stragglers that just peek their head in or stop by to see, if by chance they could fool you or get one over, or just see what happens, try their luck, I suppose. you should know well enough and better enough at this point where you could see it coming before it even presents itself. And you could bid it adieu gracefully if it does. You know what I mean? Or when it does. I'll emphasis on if, because like I said, I don't even think at this point in time that a lot of things that are not really good for you have an open door to get to you. You know, not really and truly. Like I talked about the backdooring energies in your dreams and in the psyche, and you know, projectively through different mystical means perhaps, but like I said, the emperor is always on guard. Always on guard. Always the executor of his estate and state of being, you know? So yeah, I have way more faith in you to know, to discern exactly what choices are needed, you know, the optimal choices for your life to carry out this, you know, promising future that's ahead. My God, the 10 of Cups and the 10 of Coins. And I also have all the faith in the force field that you have um that you have charged around you to repel anything that is not for your greatest good. It's like when Arya came back from her training, like at first nobody, like everybody still looked at her. They could sense that something was different about her, that she wasn't the same little girl, but they didn't know how much had changed about her until they experienced Arya in all of her glory. And then we know that she was the one that rendered the final blow to everybody's enemy, the whole kingdom's enemy, which was the Night King, the king of the dead, that was a menace to all of creation and throughout the series. So if you know, if she hadn't taken that step and followed that pathway, you know, no one could have known, no one, she couldn't have known how she would ultimately be, like how her trial and tribulation in life would have led her to be such a strength and power that she would end up saving the very kingdom that she fled from, you know, which is so powerful in so many ways when you think about how that can apply to each of us in some way, shape, or form, you know. But what I was going to say is when she came back, you could try her if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like you could try her if you wanted to, looking at her on sight as old sweet little Arya Stark, and get your head cut off, literally. So yeah, I have way more faith in you at this point, that you know that sword is sharp, and it thrusts deep for anything that would even dare to try to derail you after all of the work and focus and devotion that you have committed yourself to at this point. All right, so let me see. Oh, and looky here, Ramsey. Well, we know what happens to him at the end. And a two of spears, which is a two of wands. Yeah, having made the optimal choice already, which was in choosing yourself to take in that road less traveled way back when you didn't even know that's what you were doing. You didn't even know how maybe a path that you took years ago, decades ago, maybe lifetimes ago, but certainly heavy on the seasons or cycles ago. Perhaps even to move in the opposite direction of this more carnal, like the lower nature of your organic being, you know, the more karmic essence of you, to move away from that, to look away from that, to advance away from that energy, not to forsake it in a way that, you know, you cast out the aspects of yourself that are to be accepted and embraced, even like the light and the dark should be in all of us. But there's a balance that was acquired on your life's journey. You made it your mission, perhaps, to establish some balance in those frequencies between light and dark, and perhaps a bit more heavy on the light side where it was needed and necessary. And maybe it's taken more work to cultivate the light in you and of you, because it's easy for us to fall into our darkness quite naturally, honestly, especially with all of the provocations and propaganda and conditioning around us, you know, by the time since birth, you know what I mean? Like, you've always had the necessary support and encouragement to be as dark as you possibly can be, but the light is something that you have to make a firm decision to be and to pursue and to express, whether you have support or not. And a lot of times, there, for those that were so intentional and devoted to their light, you found yourself having just as great of a resistance against it, you know, or at least to that devotion to it. And this is for those that persevere nonetheless. You know, as many of the characters, as I said in this story, did, that journeyed through the dark night of the soul, and for the most part came out unscathed. I mean, they had some battle wounds and scars for sure, but it didn't tarnish the purity of their souls. You know, like, for the worst that any of them had gone through, it still didn't tarnish like who they were at their core. You know, the value of humanity that they had ultimately been bred with, you know. And that's the key. You know, that was always the mission for any of us. It wasn't to be perfect, it wasn't to be saints, you know, or to be spotless in our efforts to just grow, you know, and to evolve. It was just to do so in the highest frequency of light possible, with you know, while hurting as little of anything around us as we possibly could, unjustifiably so. You know, that was the only pass or fail, really, of the entire test of life thus far. You know, and there's so much more to go, but like I said, you go it now with almost like a higher degree of understanding and understanding, than you definitely had when you started, you know. So it makes the outlook of the future that much more promising and expansive, because you know so much more about yourself and about the world that you intend to contribute, or dare I say, to contribute to, or dare I say, to create altogether. You know, so there's a great reward and a return for that invested energy at this time. So again, it makes the call for discernment and what you align with that much more important, you know, and significant, pivotal, because you could align yourself in one wrong way that seems, pardon me, that seems subtle, that seems harmless, that could derail everything that you've worked for up until this point. And then on the upside, of course, as you continue to maintain, you know, the perspective that you have cultivated up until this point, you have nothing but positive, you know, positive expectations to look forward to to continue to align in ways that multiply that harvest even more. Where 10 of coins ain't even the max that you can get. Like there's an infinite prosperity and abundance that you can tap into on account of staying true to your own personal integrity, self-control, personal devotion to your path, and so on and so forth, and your pure passions, not the perverted ones or distorted ones. And what was I going to say? I think I was just really speaking on 448, just lit up on the phone. How how infinite, your potential can be at that point when when your devotion is unshakable. Is unshakable. Yeah. Because once you get to that point where there's nothing, not no deal, no proposition, there's nothing anybody could dangle in front of your face that could make you deceive yourself or sell yourself short or sell your soul, as simple as it can get or as deep as it can get, or severe, I should say, as it can get. There's nothing, there's no temptation, there it is, that could be put in front of you at this point that could steer you off the path that you feel most divinely aligned with. When that truly is the focus of devotion, the grounding of devotion, you could never be swayed, really, one way or the other. Not spiritually, not emotionally. You may even consider it, but you would not allow anything to jeopardize not only what you have created and cultivated for yourself at this time, but just the sheer possibility of ruining the future for you and your legacy would be enough for you to abstain, from anything that poses that type of threat. Even if it looks good, even if it sounds good, even if it means well. I have all faith in you that you just can't be fooled that way. You can't be deceived that way. So I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, that was fun. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.